We don't usually notice the moment when a routine breaks. It's quiet. It happens between steps. The kind of interruption that doesn't announce itself as danger, only as delay. This one began inside an airport, where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen if you've done nothing wrong. Brooke Alden was traveling for a court hearing that mattered more than she was willing to say out loud, not because of money, but because of what absence would allow. This is where she takes over. I was already past the checkpoint when a voice came from my left. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you for a moment." I stopped because stopping felt safer than pretending I hadn't heard it. 2 airport police officers stood close enough that people began walking around us instead of through us. "This won't take long," one of them added, already guiding me toward a side corridor. Inside the small room, the door didn't close all the way. That detail stuck with me. They weren't arresting me. They were watching me. "We received a welfare report," the taller officer explained. "A family member expressed concern about your emotional state." "My emotional state," I repeated. "Yes. They indicated you might be in distress and not safe to travel today." I set my bag on the table and unzipped it without being asked. My hands were steady. That seemed to disappoint them. They checked my things. A dog walked past once, then again. No one rushed. No one raised a voice. "Are you feeling overwhelmed today?" one of them asked. "I'm going to a probate hearing in Tucson." That wasn't the question. I know. There was a pause while they watched me breathe. "The person who made the report is my father," I added. "He's been trying to stop me from appearing in court." One of them glanced down at a tablet. The other kept looking at my face, like he was comparing it to something written elsewhere. This was the moment the system slowed instead of speeding up. We noticed it too, when the room stopped feeling like a precaution and started feeling like a calculation. They let me go eventually, cleared, documented, late. By the time I stepped back into the terminal, my flight was already boarding. I didn't run. I walked to the airline counter, knowing exactly what I was about to find. If this story sounds familiar, stay with it. There's more to come. They didn't tell me to sit, but there was only one chair. One of the officers slid a clipboard across the table. "Just stay here while we finish this up." Finish what? Exactly a welfare check. The word landed differently in a small room. Not an accusation, not a warning. Something softer and harder at the same time. They took my bag again. Slower this time. A man with a dog walked past the open doorway. The dog didn't look at me. That felt important. "You said you're traveling for court," the shorter officer noted, glancing at his screen. "What kind of court probate?" A pause. "Not judgment. Calculation." "Anyone with you today?" "No." "Anyone meeting you there?" "My attorney." Another pause. He typed something. They asked simple things. Where I lived. How long I'd been away from my parents. Whether I'd slept the night before. Whether I'd eaten. I answered without rushing. I knew better than to sound defensive. Or eager. "You don't seem upset." The taller one observed. "I'm focused." He looked at me longer than necessary. "That's not what the report says." "I know." Silence stretched. Not hostile. Just quiet enough to make room for doubt. The shorter officer's radio crackled. He turned slightly away, lowered his voice, listened, nodded once, when he faced me again. Something had shifted. "The caller is listed as your father." "Yes." He expressed concern you might be spiraling. "I'm not." No argument followed, no challenge. Just another note added somewhere I couldn't see. They stood back, gave me space. That mattered more than reassurance. "All right," the taller one said at last. "You're cleared to continue." Cleared didn't mean unaffected. By the time I stepped back into the terminal, the departure board had already changed. My gate still flashed my flight number. Boarding. Final group. I checked the time, then the app. The app spun. Then refreshed. And my seat was gone. The airline counter was already crowded, people leaning in, voices low, all of us pretending we weren't anxious. When it was my turn, I slid my phone across the counter with the app still open. My boarding pass disappeared, I said. It was there a minute ago. The agent tapped at her keyboard, eyes moving faster than her hands. She frowned, then leaned closer to the screen. That's strange. Those words again. Quiet. Polite. Heavy. It looks like your itinerary was modified, she continued. The system shows a change made this morning. I didn't change it. She nodded, like she'd already guessed that part. Let me pull the history. I watched her scroll. A thin line appeared under my name. Time stamped. Logged. This was done through Manage Booking, she said, using a linked account. I felt the air go still in my chest. A family account, I asked. She didn't answer directly, just tilted the screen enough for me to see the access note. Reason listed as customer medical issue. I let out a slow breath. So I'm not on the flight. She shook her head. Not anymore. The departure board chimed behind us. Final call. My name wasn't attached to it. Can you document this? I asked. Formally. Her expression changed. Less customer service. More careful. I can file an incident report, she said. It won't fix the flight. But it will show what happened. That's fine, I replied. I just need it on record. She nodded once and started typing. By the time she printed the page and slid it toward me, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Half a sentence. Then gone. The flight took off without me. The clock kept moving anyway. I stepped away from the counter and sat on the edge of an empty row of seats. The paper from the airline felt thin in my hands, like it could tear if I gripped it too hard. The agent came around a few minutes later with another printout. She didn't smile this time. I pulled the full audit trail. She said quietly, "You should look at this." She set it down between us, tapping one line with her finger. Change made at 5:43 this morning. She continued, accessed through a linked account. Same email domain. I stared at the timestamp. I'd been asleep then, or thought I was. That wasn't me, I said. I know. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. It wasn't flagged as fraud because the login was authorized. Authorized, that word again. Clean, neutral, hard to argue with. They listed a reason. She added, customer medical issue, non-specific. My jaw tightened, so nobody checked. There's nothing to check, she replied. From our end. It looks like a family member helping. I nodded once. I need to rebook. I said, soon. She turned back to her screen. There's a seat to Phoenix in about 40 minutes. That's the fastest I've got. Tucson. She shook her head. Not today. That's fine. I said, I'll figure out the rest. Her fingers paused. Do you want me to note this as interference? Yes. She clicked again, then slid the incident report across the counter with the earlier one tucked underneath. This stays internal unless someone asks for it. She said, but it exists. That's enough. As I stood, my phone buzzed again. A notification from the airline app. It showed the new booking, Phoenix. 1 seat, middle, no apology, no explanation. I texted my attorney a photo of the reports and one line. They accessed the booking. It's documented. The reply came back almost immediately. I see it. Drive if you have to. I picked up my bag and started walking toward the new gate, already counting the hours left in the day. The seatbelt sign blinked off and the cabin shifted into its low, restless hum. I stayed seated, phone still in airplane mode, watching people reach for bags they wouldn't need for a while. When the Wi-Fi connected, it did so slowly. 1 bar, then 2. I opened a message thread with Matthew. Cleared at PDX. Welfare check. Missed original flight. A few seconds passed. The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Then came back. Send what you have. I took photos of the reports on my tray table, flattening the pages with my palm so the timestamps stayed visible. The light overhead flickered once. The file wheel spun longer than I liked. Airline incident included, I added. Audit trail shows family access. The reply came through mid-upload. That's enough to slow them down. I leaned back and closed my eyes for a moment. Not relief. Just a pause. A flight attendant stopped beside my row. Water. Yes. Please. She handed me a cup and moved on without a second look. I took a sip and set it down untouched. Another message arrived. They'll push emergency authority. Be ready to move when you land. I typed back with my thumbs. I'm landing in Phoenix. Then drive. He answered. I'll be in the courtroom. The plane dipped slightly. The engines changed tone. I opened the rental app and reserved the first car I saw. Compact. Available. No questions. When the wheels touched down, I was already unbuckling. Phone in my hand. The day narrowed to distance and time. I was halfway across the terminal in Phoenix when Matthew called. I stepped to the side near a window, the heat already pressing through the glass. They filed, he said without preamble. Filed what? An ex parte petition, special administration, emergency authority. I closed my eyes, just for a second. On what grounds? They're claiming you're unreachable and were detained for safety reasons this morning. That's not what happened. I know. His voice stayed level. That's why they're calling it emergency. They want a ruling before you walk in. I leaned my forehead against the cool pane. A plane taxied past, slow and indifferent. What do you need from me? Nothing new, he said. What you already sent is clean. Airport welfare check. Cleared. Airline incident. Audit trail. No criminal hold. No medical directive. A pause. Then, they're stretching language. That's their specialty. He exhaled softly. The judge hasn't ruled yet. She asked for documentation. When? Now. I glanced at the clock. The minutes felt heavier than they should have. I'm renting a car. I said, I'll drive. That helps. He replied, Your presence matters. Not emotionally. Procedurally. I'll be there. Another pause. Less comfortable this time. They're framing urgency. He added, asset protection. Risk of loss. My grandfather's house has been locked for weeks. I know. But urgency doesn't have to be true. Just unchallenged. I pushed off the window and started walking again. The rental counters came into view. I'm challenging it, I said. That's why I'm holding the line. We hung up without saying anything else. At the counter. The clerk slid a clipboard toward me. Name. Brooke Alden. She typed, nodded, handed me keys. Row 3. Compact. I took them and turned toward the garage, already mapping the drive in my head. Time wasn't gone yet. Just tighter. The garage smelled like warm concrete and gasoline. I found the car in row 3, a gray compact with the windows already hot to the touch. The engine turned over on the first try. That helped. I pulled out of the airport and merged onto the highway, the city thinning behind me. The phone sat in the cup holder, screen dark, no calls, nothing else I could do while moving. About 20 minutes in, a message came through from Matthew. They're still arguing urgency. I tapped the microphone. I'm on the road. 90 minutes out. That's enough. He sent back. They can't pretend you vanished. The landscape flattened. Brown hills. Open sky. I kept both hands on the wheel. Eyes forward. Speed steady. No reason to give anyone another excuse. A semi passed on the left. Wind rocking the car for a second. I adjusted and kept going. Another text buzzed. Judge asked for clarification on the detention claim. I exhaled and pressed reply. Welfare check only. Cleared. Documented. I told her. Traffic slowed briefly near a construction zone. Cones. Flags. Then it opened again. When the courthouse sign appeared in the distance, I checked the time and pulled into the lot without hesitating. The engine clicked as it cooled. I grabbed my bag and stepped out. The heat immediate. The building already waiting. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Beige walls. A low hum from the lights. Everyone already seated except the judge. Matthew stood when he saw me, just enough to catch my eye. He didn't smile. He nodded once. I took the chair beside him and set my folder on the table. The paper made a soft sound when it landed. Too loud in that room. My parents sat across the aisle. My father stared straight ahead. My mother's hands were folded, knuckles pale. "Ms. Alden," the clerk called. "Please be seated." Judge Barnes entered without ceremony and took the bench. She looked down at the file, then up. "Counsel," she began, "I have an emergency petition for special administration." My father's attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, the situation requires immediate action. The opposing party was detained this morning for safety concerns and could not be reached." Matthew rose. "May I respond?" Briefly. He handed up a thin stack. "Airport welfare check report. Cleared. No hold. No arrest. Time-stamped." The judge read without expression. "And this," he continued, passing another page, "is the airline incident report. Booking accessed through a family-linked account. Changes made hours before travel." The attorney across the aisle shifted. "Those reports don't negate the urgency." Judge Barnes looked up. "They do if the urgency is manufactured." My father finally turned. His eyes met mine for half a second. Then he looked away. "Ms. Alden," the judge said, "are you present and able to participate?" "Yes, Your Honor." She nodded. "Once. The ex parte petition is denied." A breath moved through the room. "Not relief. Release. I am setting an evidentiary hearing for tomorrow morning." She continued, "All communications related to the welfare report and the airline access are to be preserved." The gavel tapped lightly. "Not final. Enough." We stood. My mother reached for her purse too quickly, then stopped. My father said nothing. Matthew leaned close. "You did what you needed to do." I gathered my papers and followed him out, the door closing behind us with a soft, ordinary click. Outside the courthouse, the heat pressed in close, like it had been waiting all morning. I stood near my car and let the folder rest against my leg, the weight of it familiar now. Matthew stopped beside me. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be slower. I'll be here," I answered. He nodded and walked away without adding anything else. My parents passed a few minutes later. My mother's hand lifted halfway, then dropped back to her side. My father didn't look over. They moved toward their car, close together, quieter than I'd ever seen them. I sat inside my own car for a while before turning the key. The phone buzzed once. A notification preview showed my mother's name. The message never opened. It disappeared. I didn't chase it. On the drive to the hotel, traffic crawled. I didn't mind. For the first time that day, nothing was being decided without me. That night, I laid the papers out on the desk and read them again. Not for strategy, just to see them as they were. Dates, times, notes written by people who didn't know my family and didn't need to. I realized something simple then. Brooke Alden didn't win by being louder or tougher or faster. She won by staying present long enough for the truth to have a place to land. The rest could wait. And if this story feels close to something you've lived, you already know why it matters.